Hey guys, what's up? It's Murphy from Warcurse.
Hi, this is Charlotte from Delane.
This is Fernando from Moonspell.
This is Alex from Lisa Eyes.
This is Heather Michelle from Grave Shadow, and you are listening to the Great Metal Debate Podcast.
Hey, podcast listeners, welcome back to the show for another metal artist interview. I'm joined by Jeff and Sarah of Mindmaze. Guys, thank you all so much for joining the Great Metal Debate.
Thanks for having us.
So we're here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee on one of the final stops on Mindmaze's summer road trip, the No Rest in the Midwest tour. What's been the response to this time out on the road?
It's definitely been a mixed bag. Some shows are better than others, but we've actually had a lot of fun. We try to, do stuff for ourselves as far as going around and seeing cool stuff as well, so that even if the show responses aren't all great, we still have fun. But even the ones that there aren't a ton of people at, there's been people showing up to every single show that are like actual serious dedicated fans, and that makes a big difference.
I was going to ask about that. I've been following you guys on social media. It looks like on your time off, what little you've had, you have been able to take in some sights. What all have you been able to see?
Well, the first thing that we did was we started the tour by going to Niagara Falls, which was really cool because none of us had ever been there. So we started out going there, but we also got to see the Grassy Knoll and the JFK Memorial in Dallas. We went to Memphis yesterday and saw Beale Street and all that cool stuff. And then we went to Nashville, the city today. So, there's been some other little things along the way, but those were the main kind of sites that we've seen so far.
Is that something that you guys envisioned when you planned this tour, or did it just kind of happen spontaneously?
A little bit of both. The Niagara Falls thing was intentional, just because we kind of, I'm a very meticulous planner when it comes to the way we route everything. And when I saw that we were basically going to be passing through Niagara Falls on the way up to Toronto from where we live in Pennsylvania, I had the idea of kind of, why don't we cross over into Canada the night before, and then we'll just be in Niagara Falls, which is only an hour and a half from Toronto. And so, yeah, stuff like that was kind of intentional. But the stuff in Dallas and, whatever, sometimes along the way we'll just kind of be sitting on our phones while we're driving around, just being like, oh, we're going to be pretty close to this place. Why don't we stop there if we have the time?
And as far as the shows, have you all been able to play some cities and venues that you'd not reached in the past?
We actually played pretty much all venues we never played before, except for in Kansas City. We played at the Riot Room before, but every other venue that we played on this tour, even if we played the general area before, the city, we played a new venue. So we definitely got to check out some new venues, for better or worse. Some of them were awesome. Some of them, weren't, but it was still cool because we got to see a bunch of new stuff and, check out a bunch of new venues.
You guys have an impressive touring history, including spending time on the road with the legendary Saxon. How did those experiences in the past inform the way you try to do it now as far as touring and performing?
Well, performance-wise, I think, touring with bands like Saxon and Armored Saint rubbed off on us a lot, just because we kind of have always sort of had this approach to live performance that we like to be very live, 100% live and spontaneous, and we don't really, we don't perform to a click track live, we don't use backing tracks. Not that there's anything wrong with that, there's a lot of bands that do that stuff, and it's totally cool, but we've just always been more of the, we tend to have a lot of old school influence and upbringing musically, and I think touring with bands like Saxon and Armored Saint even tipped us further over in that regard, that it's we really just wanted to sort of follow in that tradition, more of that old school kind of approach to somewhat newer school metal to a degree. But as far as the touring thing goes, it's a totally different experience going out and doing support tours as opposed to playing on our own, both because we always end up with less time to sightsee and do stuff on the support tours, because the load-ins for the shows will usually be at 2, 3 in the afternoon, as opposed to maybe 6 o'clock for a bar show that we're doing on our own. And the other thing is that when you tour with headlining bands, they usually have a tour bus and a driver, so the band gets to sleep overnight while they get driven to the next city, and we're always out on our own, and we don't have anybody with us most of the time, and we're driving ourselves. So some of those get really, really rough because the headlining band doesn't think 9 hours between one city to the next one is that big of a deal, but we have to drive it all overnight. So,
and obviously you're aware of history, things like the band Wormreich with accidents that can happen. Do you guys have a protocol in place as far as traveling from city to city?
We've actually been very fortunate thus far that, like, we've never really had to deal with anything, fingers crossed, as far as, like, breaking down, or we've never had anything stolen or broken into, or, anything like that. We're very mindful of it because we've certainly heard the horror stories from all kinds of different bands. We always try to make sure that we're trying to, like, park the van in, like, the least shady area possible, or, making people stay with it. And when we were on tour last year, when we were driving through Texas, our live keyboard player, he and his girlfriend, who was with us doing our merch and sort of taking pictures and helping us out, they were in their own car following behind our van, and they actually hit a truck tire, and their car actually ended up getting totaled as a result of it. So we had to basically, like, circle back and try to help them out. And it ended up, there was really nothing we could do. They just ended up having to get towed and, deal with it. And he just missed one show and then rejoined us at the next one. But, yeah, fortunately for us, we've been pretty lucky so far.
And I mean, like, we kind of have a system in place when it comes to driving, as far as being safe with that goes, that generally Jeff and I do all the driving, and our schedules as far as how we operate are so opposite that it just has worked out perfectly, because I'm much more of a normal. I'm much more of, like, a daytime or morning person. So, I usually get up when we get up in the morning, and I drive first, and I do most of the day driving and stuff like that. And then Jeff works second shift, so he's usually up till, like, 3 in the morning. So, when we have to drive after the gigs, he always drives. So it kind of has just worked out really well that we haven't gotten ourselves into any kind of, like, dangerous situations there where anybody's falling asleep at the wheel or anything like that. So
sounds like you guys have a system. Well, let's turn to talk now about your most recent album, Resolve, released in 2017. With the passage now of a little time, how do you look back at that effort, and just kind of how do you evaluate that?
Well, Resolve was definitely quite an undertaking for us because unlike our first two albums, it was a concept album, and not just in terms of lyrics, but like musically, the whole album really just kind of fits together like puzzle pieces. There's like something like 20 or 21 different varying degrees of recurring musical themes throughout it, and it took a long time to write. It took a long time to record, and it was a very taxing process, especially compared to like the second album, Back from the Edge, was very fast and really easy to make actually, but I definitely think that, I think it's our best album to date. I think everyone in the band pretty much is in agreement about that. And I mean, yeah, most bands always just say that, like, oh, the newest one's the best one. But there were a lot of things in particular, just like little things about, recording and mixing and writing, and, that with each album, you kind of have like a little list of like, well, let's do this differently next time. And, I think we did a pretty good job with kind of doing all of those things. So,
with 3 albums under your belt, do you think that you all have developed a Mindmaze style, or is that something that's still evolving, or is that not something that you want to do, to be pigeonholed to where there's a certain style that you play?
Yes and no. I definitely think that we've kind of, at this point, developed somewhat of a signature sound, but we're still kind of blending a lot of different styles together. And with each album, we've kind of like shifted the focus more towards a different kind of influence. Like, for example, Back from the Edge, the second album, was more of a power metal kind of based. That was the main influence going in there. Whereas with Resolve, it was much more of like the progressive metal influence, especially being a concept album. And actually, like, the newer material that we've been working on is kind of a lot more like straightforward, almost hard rock, kind of AOR sort of influence, because that's a big influence for us, and it's one that we kind of haven't really like explored yet thus far. So when we decided to do an EP, you know, to kind of bridge the gap between Resolve and our next full-length album, we're like, well, why don't we kind of experiment with that a little bit and just kind of see how it goes. And I mean, I personally really love the stuff that we've been working on, so we've kind of just been sort of shifting from album to album. Like, we're staying within a sound that I still think could be identified as Mindmaze, but, you know, it's kind of more focused in different areas, so to speak, from album to album.
Yeah, it's like doing something differently every time, I think, really helps keep things, you know, exciting for us. You know, it's like at this point, if we were already working on like our fourth album of essentially just like exactly the same stuff as, you know, 3 albums before it, I'd probably already be getting like, you know, fatigued creatively. But it's like, I think it's a little, you know, it's a little easier for me to find inspiration if I keep just sort of, you know, bouncing around off different things. And, you know, honestly, I think more than anything too, making Resolve was so musically taxing for us that like this is sort of almost you know, the like the ripple effect of that or whatever, where we kind of almost needed a break after working on an album that was generally all just dense, complicated, you know, music for a while. It's like to get back to doing stuff that's like more, you know, just simple individual song based stuff. And it's like, it's tough because as a new band or a newer band, younger band, more unknown band, whatever, like, it is riskier to be like that because I think, you know, that's the kind of like, the whole like artistic experimentation thing is usually a little more welcome when artists are more, you know, bigger names. But it's like, it's harder to get the foundation built, I think, when with like each subsequent release, you're kind of, you know, shifting from one thing to another, because, you know, we'll put out an album and a lot of power metal people will be like, oh, I really like this one. And then the next one will come out and you know, some of those same people will be like, well, I don't like this one as much. But then other people will like that one a lot more than the ones before it. So, you know, it is kind of a little risky, I guess, but, you know, at the same time, it is more rewarding, I think, to have a sound that incorporates, you know, the power progressive, traditional metal, AOR, hard rock, you know, progressive rock, like all that stuff into it, because not necessarily everybody gets it, but I think the people that get it really love it, you know, which is really cool.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of European power metal, and you guys definitely had some nods in that direction. I mean, what's the goal here? I mean, do you all want to headline prog power one day? Is that kind of what you'd envision?
At this point, we'd be just super stoked to play prog power at all, but I mean, you know, yeah, that festival specifically is a very, you know, it's a key part of our niche sound. Like, bands of our style, that's basically almost everybody's goal, to play prog power and be able to, you know, perform in front of that audience, because that's basically like the best chance you're going to get to perform in front of a crowd that's specifically interested in your style of music, which is really hard to do. You know, no matter who you're touring with in the United States, it's extremely hard to get in front of that kind of super specific audience. So, I mean, that's a huge goal for us. But, I mean, we kind of have a bunch of other stuff that we really have in mind as things we haven't really thought so far ahead as, like, headlining some festival or anything yet, but, you know, like, just going to Europe to play some festivals at all, or any shows like that, or even it would be great to do a tour in Europe, something like that. So we kind of try to think more in like short-term goals of stuff like that, but like festivals in Europe, prog power, maybe like 70,000 tons of metal, those are kind of like all major things that we, you know, would love to in the next few years. So
I know you guys would kill it in any of those locales. Now, Sarah, you're very active on social media. You share a lot of personal takes on being an up-and-coming artist. What role does social media play in building your brand as an artist and developing a fan base?
Well, it's kind of hard because, you know, it's sort of a double-edged sword anymore. It is very important with how things are anymore. Social media is, like, key as far as building a fan base goes. And it's a double-edged sword because, I've kind of gone the route of trying to be as honest as I can about things. And, our fans and the people that really support us and are, have been following us for a while have really kind of taken to that. They like the fact that we're honest about things. If a show doesn't or a tour doesn't exactly go maybe as planned, we're not going to go and complain about it specifically, but we'll be honest and say, hey, look, this is expensive. This takes a lot of work. We'll be upfront telling people this is why we don't play in this city. This is why we don't do that because it's too expensive or it's this or it's that. We're very upfront with honestly telling people, like, this is how the business is. This is how it is for us. And, this is why we do things the way we do. And for the most part, I think it's been a good thing. The people that follow us they really like to follow my posts. They like to see some of the, sometimes silly and stupid stuff I post about, daily things that I'm doing or stuff that we're doing. So, it has its positives and negatives because on the other side of that, there is the whole, you can say one wrong thing on social media and, it snowballs into this big, kind of, ordeal that you never really saw coming when you just were like, yeah, I'm just going to post how I feel, and then all of a sudden it's just this big deal and dozens of people are like, yeah, I hate this band now. So, it's kind of a slippery slope. You got to kind of pick your battles with some of the things you want to be honest about, but, for the most part, I think it's worked out really well. I think our fans really appreciate, the stuff that I post, and they appreciate that they can kind of expect us to be real with them, so...
So 3 albums in, you guys have built quite a significant band, but you still have regular full-time jobs and personal lives. How do you make the band work in that context where it's a primary part of your life, but in many ways also the secondary part of your life?
It's very difficult, honestly, and it's actually increasingly difficult as time goes by, just because, the more we do, and the further we get with things, the more we want to do, and the more we can do to a point. There's usually opportunities or offers for things coming in semi-regularly for us. They're not all career-making opportunities or things, but it's stuff that if we were in a position where we didn't have to have day jobs and we didn't have to pay to support ourselves and, pay rent and whatever, we would still take them just in an effort to help things grow. But, we have to pick and choose with what we can do because, pretty much everyone in the band's in a position where we have, a finite amount of time off from work and, or at least, at the very least, a finite amount of time off from work that we can get paid for. And pretty much everyone in this band is in a position where, we can't really afford to just be like, I'm not going to have a paycheck for a month or, whatever. So, we kind of have to pick and choose with stuff. We get offered tours and we'd love to take them. We've been offered some tours supporting some really, sizable bands in this subculture and bands that we really like. But, we just can't do it. There's just no way that the money makes any sense because there's no way that, one, we could afford to be away from work, quit our jobs, and go without money for, a month. And also, we'd just never be able to afford the logistical overhead that doing a tour would require. It's when you go out and do something like what we're doing right now, it's only 11 days. The actual cost of, renting a vehicle and paying for hotel rooms and gas, but it's not really that much money. It's not that hard to be able to sell enough merch and get paid, enough for gigs and, that it kind of pays for itself. But the support tour stuff gets really hard to make work in that same way. But that's really the stuff that you need to do if you want to grow the band organically through playing live. The support tours we've done with Saxon and Armor Saint and the one last year with Serenia and Arcona, those are the things that generally do the most as far as expanding our fan base is concerned. But they're also the things that take the most money and the most time. So, yeah, it's definitely a matter of picking and choosing what we want to do and what makes the most sense and, when the timing is right.
Sounds like tough choices ahead for you guys on what to do, but some good opportunities. Beginning to wrap up with you guys this evening, after the completion of the No Rest in the Midwest tour, what are the band's plans for the remainder of 2018?
Well, the biggest thing that we have to do is we've been in the process of making an EP for months now. It was actually originally scheduled to be done like this summer, but we had a bunch of stuff kind of happen in our lives, and the stress and time it took to actually book this tour that we're in the middle of kind of just like overwhelmed us at a certain point, and we kind of had to just put the brakes on that and just be like, stop, we're gonna pause that for a minute, because it's not an album, our label's not putting it out, we're doing it all ourselves, and we did crowdfund for it, so like obviously we don't want to take forever to make it because we want to deliver the product to the people that paid for it, but there wasn't a hard deadline on it. We kind of just had to say, look, like life happens, things happen. We need to kind of just, hold this for a second. So when we get done with this tour, that's kind of priority number one, is finishing up this EP, getting all those Kickstarter rewards delivered to all the people that, pledged for them. And then, we're probably planning on doing a few shows here and there for the remainder of the year. But after that point, we're not really sure. We actually have kind of talked at this point early on about maybe taking a break, like not anything like we're breaking up or something like that, but kind of maybe just taking a few months to, get to the rest of our lives a bit and kind of give ourselves a breather, because we have kind of been doing stuff almost constantly, and we haven't really had much time to just have a break and take a minute for ourselves. So, after we do the stuff we have for the rest of the year, we're probably just going to take a short break and, give ourselves some time to kind of do other things and, sort of relax and all that stuff. But, I know how that goes too, and like Jeff was saying, we pretty much constantly get offers for stuff, and if I know our luck, we'll get offered some tour that's a really good deal that we can't turn down, and it's something we really want to do right after we decide that we're going to take a break. So, who knows what might happen. If something comes up that's like something we can't say no to, obviously we're probably still going to do that, but I guess we'll kind of see.
Minimum, fans are going to have some new music to listen to, which should excite them.
Yeah, that's kind of, what we're hoping, is that it's like, when we put this out, it'll at least give people, a few new songs and stuff to hold them over and hopefully keep, the momentum going to a point, because it's like, that's probably like one of our biggest concerns about why we sort of almost stress ourselves out about not going too long between putting things out or not playing live enough or whatever. It's like, there's 100,000 different bands people can listen to. It's like the choices are like endless, and we're always a little paranoid that it's like, if we just go through like a year of inactivity, you lose your momentum, and it's like then you're kind of fighting your way back then for a while after that, and it's like we're trying to hopefully avoid having that happen. So
Well, finally, guys, what is the best way for fans to purchase music and merchandise from Mindmaze, including the latest album, Resolve?
Well, there's a number of different ways, but I mean, the main thing that you can do to just kind of find your way to everything is you just go to our official website, www.mindmazeband.com. That has links to everything, like, our official store. We sell all the albums that we have physical copies of, which now is all of them again. Our first album was actually out of print, but we just got it repressed, so we have that one. It's actually going to be re-released on August 31st, so that's going to be out. It has a couple bonus tracks, some cool stuff. It's an expanded booklet. It has some liner notes that Jeff wrote some information about the songs, so it kind of gives some fans extra information, something special there. So we have that. But we have the other albums. We have a vinyl version of our second album. We have shirts. We have all that kind of stuff. And our official store is linked right on our website there. But we're on like Amazon, iTunes. You can listen to us on Spotify, all that stuff too. So, yeah.
I'm definitely going to check you guys out at the merch booth after the show tonight. Get a t-shirt and a copy of Resolve from you. Looking forward to the show this evening. My first time to see you all perform live, and best of luck on the remainder of the tour and the rest of the year.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.